for the conference. And this afternoon we are privileged to have a number of presenters. Our first presentation will be given by Reverend Dr. Josephat Waskundi. Then we have Dr. Jane Nambiri. The third presenter will be Reverend Dr. Gerard Kimario. And then we have Mr. Maurice Owinyo. There is also a presentation from Sister Dr. Margaret Alingo. She is not yet here. In case she comes, she will be presenting then. Welcome, and you have 20 minutes for presentation. Before our father begins, I want to introduce him to the audience. Father belongs to the Catholic Diocese of Butembo Ben in DRC Congo. Is a former student at the liturgical department of Kuea. He holds a doctorate in sacred liturgy from the Pontifical Liturgical Institute, St. Anselm in Rome. Confused, huh? We are not here. Okay. This is from campaign. We shall see how it goes.
Thank Yes, thank you. May we start? Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. All protocol observed. And I'm very happy to be here for this paper. And that is why I would like first to thank Professor Albert Mundele Gengi for the invitation, with all his staff that has prepared very well for us this moment, this intellectual exercise. So the paper I'm going to present, as it has been announced, has as topic Women Ministry in African Church and Society, a prospective approach. If you can move second slide, yes. The research we have made goes through those points there, the content. The preliminary point looks at the future Eve, or the paradox of the Lilith. The second one deals with the scriptural and anthropological insights of women ministry. Then we'll be moving to the patristic and magisterial landmarks of women ministry. The fourth point talks of prospective pathways of women ministry in Africa. Then we will move to the conclusion. The method we are using, because we deal most of the time with documents and also art interpretation, is the hermeneutical method. We are going to answer to these two questions. What are the fundamental traits of the women ministry in both African church and society? And then we will have also to answer to that question, what is the liturgy of the church inspiring for women ministry, given the needs of the African church and the society and the centuries-old experience of the Bible and anthropological traditions? We keep this slide we have there. You can see an image which represents Lilith. And the question is there for the title, Future Eve or the Paradox of the Lilith. It's a paradox because it is a contradictory, let me say, ending of the Lilith, who wanted to be free, but she went to under, let me say, demonian domination. The Mesopotamian and Jewish mysticism talks about the Lilith. With the same mud he used to create Adam and before Eve, God created Lilith, which is mostly represented in arts particularly as the queen of the night, presiding over both sex and war. So the Lilith is there like the goddess of sex, but also of war. Noisily shouting for her parity with Adam, she refused to submit to Adam during sexual intercourse, and her rebellion took her away from the Eden paradise to the Saturn dominion. Standing on the back, as we can see there, of her lion mount with arms lifted up, she holds emblems of justice and civic authority in each hand, with a crown binding both divinity and royalty. So Lilith holds both divinity and royalty. Presumably, on this background, the fictional romance Android as the future Eve was made by Auguste de Villiers de l'Isle Adam in 1886. And what are the characteristics of this android? She has artificial blood, electric cables, steel bonds, living in a synthetic Eden with phosphorescent flowers, unreal grass, lab-grown plants, a flock of mechanical birds confused by distressing human voices with the purpose of controlling the upcoming world. Please go back. We are still at the first, yes, there, thank you. So with that image of the Lilith, we see that unlike African churches, which deal less with art, Western churches rely to plastic art to express concepts. And in that way, I visited in Palermo, in Sicily, in Italy, a city called Carini. In both churches, Maria Santissima degli Agonizzanti, Most Holy Mary of the Agonizing, and in the Oratorio del Santissimo Sacramento, of the Holy Sacrament, a number of representation of women. And women represented in those churches represent also the virtues of temperance, justice, hope, faith, charity, along with the Sibyls announcing the incarnation of the world. This is the birth of Jesus Christ in this world. But at the other side, men are represented by the represented figure of fortitude and prudence. Next slide. Now, the purpose of that looking at of the art is to know what can inspire women to build a world where they have something to do and something to bring as women. So building an alternative male pattern may be we can say the purpose of women. To build a model contradictory to the male models and behavior often runs the risk of drawing the female figure and action as the axiomatic tuning of the male figure and action, but at the same time mitigating the original principle of the female as a helper and companion to the genuine male, as we read in Genesis chapter 2. So we should keep that one when we are looking on the figure that should embody women, and particularly in their ministry as women. We have now biblical hints for women ministry that we are going to look at in this point. In the global context, the promotion of female shapes the whole space of life. Various church ministries and services are listed already in the New Testament. We have learned a lot about that. Romans chapter 12, from the 6th up to the 8th verse. The first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, chapter 12, from the 5th up to the 11th verse, or other verses what are there. The word service would concern all facilities freely rendered by the baptized, either men or women, in or on behalf of the church. We can say any service, but ministry refers to a received church mandate to act in or on behalf of the church. So we should not confuse those two concepts, service and ministry, particularly when we talk about the liturgical area. The word woman or female linked to ministry help us identify the acting subject biologically, anatomically, physiologically, and psychologically recognized as woman. Because today, you know, we deal with all those facts of transgender and connected subject. So for us, when we talk about woman, we talk about that one biologically, anatomically, physiologically, and psychologically recognized as women, not only legally or according to the law. All women of the gospel had in common to be strong women who never hesitate to actively and generously engage in mission despite obstacles and trials. Their networks of information allowed the apostles to truly gauge the faith life in the communities and the challenges of various reactions in the surroundings. Next slide. If we look at that image that represents Phoebe, which is called in the New Testament the deaconess, one of the first deaconess, we can see how deaconess as deacon was wearing the stole, particularly flowing from the left shoulder. Biblical and liturgical sources. Be noted, on one hand, that throughout the Western Church history, women did not exercise a priestly ministry, but on the other hand, their involvement in the evangelizing mission and the worship of the church has always been predominant, as revealed by terms such as prostatis, that means guide or guardian, Titus, chapter 2, thank you, sister. Titus, chapter 2, verse 5, or we have prostatis, synergos, that is collaborator, or even diakonos, both masculine and feminine, as we read in Romans chapter 16, verse 3. Applied now here to female figures. The oldest witness to liturgical practices and canonical provision in the post-apostolic church is undoubtedly the teaching of the Lord to the Gentiles, transmitted by the 12 apostles that we know commonly as the Didache. Here are recognized two types of complementary church ministries, the itinerant and the stable. The confirmed and approved Roman Missal, let me move to the today situation for the Diocese of Zaire, which we used to call the Zairean Rite, marked the outline of creativity and originality on church ministries, included what concerns women ministries. The Roman Missal for the Diocese of Zaire went through experimental stage from 1974 up to 1979. Then a second step of experimental stage was from 1980 up to 1987, and was approved the 30th of April 1988. What we can regret in this matter of the Zairean Rite, which is a creativity from the African land of ministry, is that this Missal that has a general decree that has to be applied in the whole country has gone as an executive type of decree. This is like an alternative. That is not the case, which is not the case according to the decree. Next slide. Now, looking at the history of women ministry, the Bible give us not many kind of women ministry. And even liturgical books do not give us a lot of information. But we can look at least at the deaconess. Now, on this topic, the International Theological Commission made a study in 1998 based on documentary data in the patristics, and found that, first thing, the deaconess as minister was listed before the subdeacon, which was the first step of the priesthood ministry. So if she was listed before, it means she was, because it is in a progressive order, she was greater, let me say, more important than the subdeacon, and she was near the priesthood, let me say the presbytery ministry. So she was there, but she was in the Eastern tradition, she was ordained with a keirotonia, which is a gesture of laying down hands upon someone to invoke the Holy Spirit upon him or upon her, as the deacon ordination. So she was ordained as a man, as was done for man, deacons. While virgins and the widows were not ordained, so they did not have the keirotonia. The apostolic constitutions recommend that deaconess have no liturgical function. So that came after. They were prevented from liturgical function, while their community functions were extended to service to women and as intermediaries between women and the bishop. So that was their role. They must stand at the entrances of women during assemblies. At that moment, we had true entrance in the church. The chapter 28 of the Apostolic Constitution talks about the women ministry, saying that the deaconess does not bless and does nothing of what priests and deacons do, but watches at the doors and assists the priest during the baptism of women for reasons of decency. By ensuring the anointing rite of women during baptismal rites and those of anointing sick women, the number of deaconess quickly boiled down for various reasons. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, okay. Now there we see many deacons. Among of them, they are women. Deacon, the name deaconess, I will summarize this page. The first place we found the liturgical ordination of a deaconess in liturgical books, it is in the Sacramentarium Adrianum at 1791, with the Oratio ad Diaconam Facendam, which is the prayer for making a deaconess, which is different from the one used for the ordination of male deacon. And at the Council of Orange, 41, the epicletic rite of laying on hands to deaconesses was removed. The last time we see in liturgical books ordinations of deaconesses, it is in 1960 in the Roman Germanic Pontifical of Mainz, which is the basic for the current Romanum Pontifical. The Pontifical is the liturgical book of rites to be officiated by a bishop. So from 1960, we no longer found liturgical books with women ordination as deacon. So next slide. The anthropological insight of women, I will not say much on that. We have heard a lot. I just remind a famous African tale of the Ashanti Kingdom and the genesis of the Baule people in the southern Ivory Coast. Overwhelmed by political threats to her homeland, the Princess Abrahapoku courageously faced the request of the Comoe River to sacrifice her prized baby for the people to be saved. Then, summarizing the fate, she calmly declared when she was asked, "Where is the baby?" She answered, "Bauli." This is the child is dead, confirming her key function of the very queen and the pillar of the staying alive of her people, thanks to a costly caring. So women are really life witnesses and the keepers of life, and that one we should take it into account looking at their women ministry. Next slide. Now, which prospective pathways can we have for the church multi-ministry in Africa? We had to look on the methodological setting of Evangelii Gaudium of Pope Francis. And he asks us there to have as a method when we are creating like ministries, we are improving, we are innovating, to initiate new evangelizing way of ministries rather than to bind merely on and claim rule spaces. So we have to look at responsibility, safeguard instead of dominion. So we have the two questions we asked at the end of this presentation, to which we would like now to answer. We would say first, there is to start from somewhere. The general introduction of the Roman Missal, number 19 up to 109, evokes active multi-ministry of the church offices and functions as principle of the church epiphany and the liturgical fecundity in two logic stated in Lumen Gentium, which is the constitution on the church. We have two ways of looking at ministries, including women ministry, or Christological, as stated in Lumen Gentium number 10 up to number 12, or pneumatological, which is number 12 up to number 13, and from number 20, number 33 up to 41. Those are pneumatological ministers that we don't find in traditional books, liturgical books. So we may not only bind on the Christological, but we can move also to the pneumatological principle on ministries. Now, coming to the conclusion, we have three criteria for a suitable women ministry in the upcoming African church and society. To apply the magisterium like the one of the motu proprio Spiritus Domini of Pope Francis to picturing anew the ministries, the African anthropology and theodicy expressed in Queen Poku's tale that we have just read, or in the Ndebele, the Nuba, and the Ovondo cultures that involved feminine features in God, we have to look on these three criteria. First, how can we create, or based on what can we create ministry and institute women ministry? The church doctrine and the canonical provisions on ministerial abilities. We have Ministeria Quaedam, we have Spiritus Domini, we have Antiquum Ministerium, that those are documents that give us what the church asks us to do or allow us to do for ministries. Then, the anthropological cautions or care related to femaleness realities as supported even by the Ubuntu, quoted by Sister Jose Ngalula, relating to the African tradition with pragmatic paradigms of African Ubuntu. We know women are not men. So we have to look at how we can take into account their realities as women to create ministry for them, to institute them, not only to have service, but also ministries. Lastly, the local needs and realities of the church and the society in Africa. Thank you. Merci. Asante.
Thank you very much, Father Josephat, for your enriching presentation from the biblical and liturgical perspective. Let us give him another clap, please. Our next presenter will be Dr. Kiston Moshe from Ivory Coast. He was supposed to present in the morning, but was not possible. He's going to present now. We are going to have he's presenting in French, and they are going to translate for us in English. We can have access to the machines there. The control room, please. Can we have the presentation of Dr. Kiston from Ivory Coast? Father Dr. Kiston, are you there? Dr. Kiston? Yes, Dr. Kiston, are you there? Could you unmute the microphone if you are there? Yes? Control room, please. Hello.
Sur la Bible et les femmes en Afrique.
Okay,
je suis, comme ça a déjà été dit, le père Kiston Moutier du diocèse de Grand Bassam en Côte d'Ivoire. Mon thème me permet aujourd'hui d'aborder un sujet qui est assez important pour notre continent, à savoir comment rendre les femmes plus dynamiques, comment les aider à être plus dynamiques en vue de prendre part à l'histoire, à l'écriture de l'histoire de notre continent. Et le thème est ainsi libellé pour dynamiser l'engagement des femmes en Afrique, une exégèse des femmes audacieuses de la Bible. You can play the slide too. Comme je le dis en introduction, nous notons aujourd'hui qu'il y a un grand mouvement social pour réduire les inégalités entre les hommes et la femme. Et nous voyons aussi qu'en Afrique, il y a une croissance de l'engagement des femmes en ce sens. Toutefois, nous notons que les femmes impactent faiblement les secteurs clés de la vie sociale et elles sont sous-représentées, si je peux m'exprimer ainsi. Or, l'Afrique, bien que dominée par la mentalité des hommes, la mentalité patriarcale, n'est pas aussi loin de ce que les femmes ont vécu dans la Bible en leur temps, où, comme on le voit, la Bible elle-même est dominée par une mentalité patriarcale. En ce sens, nous voyons qu'il y a des femmes révolutionnaires dans la Bible, des femmes qui ont fait preuve d'audace dans la Bible et qui aujourd'hui se présentent comme des modèles pour ces femmes-là. Parce que quand on analyse au fond, on se rend compte que les femmes veulent bien, mais souvent leur audace est affaiblie, leur audace est comme éteinte. Et pourtant, ils ont des sœurs qui, de la Bible, leur donnent de comprendre que par l'audace, elles ont la capacité, la possibilité de pouvoir atteindre les objectifs que le Créateur leur a fixés. Alors, notre présentation va s'articuler autour de trois principaux axes. Le premier va essayer de donner un bref aperçu de l'engagement des femmes en Afrique aujourd'hui. Le second va consister en une approche exégétique des figures féminines bibliques dont la nature de l'audace va se décliner selon la portée de leurs actions en faveur de leur communauté. Le troisième et dernier point va donner l'occasion de montrer comment l'audace des femmes de la Bible peut constituer un moteur pour dynamiser l'engagement de leurs sœurs et filles africaines. Le premier point, l'épreuve de l'engagement des femmes en Afrique aujourd'hui. Nous notons que, avec les profondes mutations que connaît la société, il y a l'omniprésence des femmes dans tous les secteurs de la vie sociale. Leur action s'étend au-delà du cadre de la vie privée et de la famille. Et en premier lieu, nous voyons que les femmes sont beaucoup engagées sur le plan socio-politique. Et à ce niveau-là, elles occupent des postes de décision dans les pays du continent. On voit qu'elles sont beaucoup plus impliquées dans les secteurs de la santé, de l'éducation, de la justice sociale. Il en résulte ainsi une mise en place dans nos différents pays de mesures politiques plus inclusives et équitables parce que les femmes sont là. Toutefois, nous notons que la position de ces femmes-là demeure fragile. Bien souvent, leur ascension est freinée par des pressions et des harcèlements subis de la part des hommes. Beaucoup d'abus sont commis par les hommes et qui font que l'audace des femmes est parfois freinée. La question de la situation professionnelle des femmes, nous notons aussi que les femmes exercent tous les métiers et toutes les activités aujourd'hui. Il n'y a plus de secteur qui soit réservé aux hommes. Mais ici encore, les femmes demeurent sous-représentées parce qu'il y a beaucoup de pressions sociales et familiales qu'elles subissent. Et cela plombe leurs différentes carrières. Pourtant, cela s'avère que dès que les femmes commencent une carrière, elles ont l'engouement et l'envie de la mener jusqu'au bout. Mais beaucoup de pression, il faut faire des enfants, il faut se marier, et ces gens de pression-là ne les aident pas. Le contexte de nos communautés chrétiennes. Nous notons que les communautés chrétiennes en Afrique sont dominées par la présence des femmes. Les femmes sont beaucoup engagées dans l'Église et elles font preuve d'une disponibilité totale. Elles donnent de leur temps, de leur énergie, de leur avoir pour que l'Église soit dynamique, vivante et efficace partout où elle se trouve. On note aussi que depuis un certain moment, depuis un certain nombre d'années, il y a des femmes qui commencent à occuper des positions, des fonctions d'accompagnement dans l'Église. Elles sont responsables d'institutions et même il y en a à qui l'Église donne l'occasion de la représenter au niveau des organismes internationaux. Toutefois, ces femmes-là demeurent moins visibles. La plupart des responsabilités semblent se limiter à l'accompagnement des mouvements ecclésiaux qui sont dédiés aux femmes. Par contre, on va noter aussi que dans cette catégorie, les femmes des ordres religieux ont plus de chance dans la mesure où à elles sont confiées des responsabilités encore plus grandes, contrairement aux laïcs. Le deuxième point des slides, le deuxième point nous permet de voir l'expérience des femmes audacieuses de la Bible. Les femmes de la Bible évoluent en grande partie à l'ombre des hommes. Cependant, certaines d'entre elles se distinguent par leur détermination particulière qui, en une circonstance précise, manifeste la pleine conscience qu'elles avaient quant au pouvoir transformateur de leur audace. Elles sont nombreuses, parfois discrètes, ces femmes qui, dans la Bible, opèrent des révolutions par un choix courageux. Nous allons retenir ici quelques-unes pour la présentation. Le reste sera dans le document final. Je parle d'abord de certaines femmes qui ont entouré la vie des grands hommes. D'abord, des femmes qui étaient autour de la naissance de Moïse. Pour ces femmes-là, nous notons leur audace en faveur de la vie et de l'éducation. Voici les sages femmes qui ont fait preuve de courage en désobéissant avec sagesse pour préserver la vie des garçons hébreux. Nous avons la mère de Moïse elle-même qui a pris soin de ne pas respecter ce que le pharaon avait demandé en cachant son enfant et en mettant tout en œuvre pour que son fils ait la vie sauve. La fille de pharaon, par exemple, qui a accepté de s'engager pour la protection et pour l'éducation d'un enfant étranger. À côté de ces femmes qui sont autour de la vie de Moïse, de la naissance de Moïse, nous avons par exemple les filles de Sélophérad dans le livre des Nombres au chapitre 27, au chapitre 36 et en Jésus chapitre 17. Voici des femmes qui se lèvent pour réclamer en public leur droit d'héritage et qui obtiennent gain de cause. Et même elles obtiennent plus, le droit de se marier à qui elles veulent, ce qui n'était pas à concevoir en son temps. Nous avons aussi l'exemple de la reine Vasti dans le livre d'Esther. C'est une femme qui a refusé d'être traitée comme un objet de plaisir au prix de ses avantages de reine. Sa réaction a certainement impacté la décision du roi lors de sa rencontre avec Esther. Elle a permis au roi de comprendre qu'on ne peut pas traiter une femme comme on le veut. On doit respecter la femme quelle qu'elle soit. Et si on relit le dialogue dans la rencontre entre Esther et le roi, on se rendra compte que le roi, à partir de ce moment-là, a une réaction tempérée. Nous voulons aussi nous tourner vers la mère de Jésus, qui, à travers son oui qu'elle dit à l'ange, s'engage dans un projet qui vise le bien de tout un peuple, au détriment de son projet matrimonial personnel. Elle ne regarde pas son propre projet, mais elle va au-delà de son propre projet. Le point qui concerne l'efficacité politico-militaire des femmes dans la Bible nous permet d'apprécier l'histoire de Déborah et de Yaël dans le livre des Juges. Ces femmes-là qui vont œuvrer pour une libération militaire de leur peuple, bien qu'étant des femmes de leur époque. Et nous avons l'exemple de la reine Esther, elle-même qui use de sa position pour obtenir une liberté, la liberté pour son peuple. Nous avons l'exemple de Judith qui, par son courage, élimine l'oppresseur de son peuple pour qu'advienne la paix. Et nous notons aussi que parmi ces femmes, il y en a qui ont fait preuve d'audace pour acquérir un statut économique stable. Je vais ici oser parler de la veuve de Sarepta, qui a été dans le Nouveau Testament, nous avons l'exemple de Priscille. Priscille qui est présentée comme une femme qui était fabricante de tentes, par exemple. Nous avons l'exemple de Tabitha qui est présentée comme une femme qui travaillait de ses mains en fabriquant des tuniques. L'exemple que même dans une mentalité qui était dominée par les hommes, il y a des femmes qui se sont présentées comme des modèles, qui sont présentées comme des leitmotivs. Et on peut, en partant de leur exemple, donner un peu plus de courage à nos sœurs en Afrique aujourd'hui. Slide number 5. Alors, en partant de l'audace des femmes de la Bible, comment est-ce que les femmes d'Afrique peuvent aujourd'hui trouver un exemple pour elles-mêmes? Elles peuvent trouver un exemple pour elles-mêmes en essayant de s'engager beaucoup plus sur les questions touchant à la justice sociale et à la dignité. C'est vrai, il y a une forte implication des femmes africaines, mais cette implication n'est pas au niveau escompté quand on voit l'évolution du monde aujourd'hui. Les femmes là pourraient alors contribuer à une prise de conscience des injustices sociales dont elles sont victimes et d'aider à y remédier. Sans par exemple opérer des jugements de valeur, par exemple, sur une femme comme Tamar en Genèse 38, nous retenons la finalité de son acte, sa détermination pour montrer que la justice n'est pas seulement déterminée par les hommes et que chacun doit être face à ses responsabilités. Dans le contexte où l'audace se prolonge dans l'esprit qui accepte de se former, nous avons par exemple l'exemple de la reine de Saba, qui vient d'Éthiopie pour venir encore se ressourcer au pied du roi Salomon. Et que les femmes ont la possibilité aujourd'hui de ne pas se limiter à ce qu'elles ont reçu. Elles ont la possibilité de pouvoir elles-mêmes aller à la recherche de la connaissance pour pouvoir elles-mêmes approfondir ce qu'elles sont et aussi apporter une contribution à leurs différentes communautés. Il y a aussi le fait qu'aujourd'hui, les femmes doivent pouvoir comprendre qu'elles disposent des mêmes potentialités que les hommes. Parce que l'histoire de l'Afrique nous montre qu'il y a des femmes qui ont été déterminées dans les mouvements d'émancipation et de lutte pour l'indépendance politique de notre continent. Et on retrouve en ce sens des femmes guerrières de la Bible. Et les Africaines peuvent retenir de ces femmes-là la capacité à dépasser toute peur, la capacité à s'engager et à faire preuve de courage pour pouvoir affronter tout ce qui peut être difficulté, tout ce qui peut être facteur de pression, en s'engageant de façon totale. Et aujourd'hui, du monde agricole au monde académique, du monde industriel au monde commercial, nous pouvons voir que les femmes peuvent faire ce que font les hommes. Il n'est plus question de se résigner à la mentalité d'une supériorité vis-à-vis des hommes vis-à-vis des femmes, à cause de leur force physique. Et l'autre élément que nous voulons signifier ici, c'est que les femmes en Afrique doivent comprendre à l'image des femmes de la Bible que l'autonomie a un prix, l'indépendance financière a un prix. C'est la situation fragile des femmes laisse croire à beaucoup d'entre elles que parce qu'elles sont défavorisées et mises parfois à l'écart.
Docteur Christon, encore 5 minutes.
Elles n'ont qu'à se contenter du peu des miettes qui leur permettent de sauver la femme. Une perception qui donne la facilité au culte à la femme, sa constitution fondamentale de créature divine, collaboratrice de son créateur. Donc les femmes aujourd'hui doivent pouvoir comprendre qu'il y a une mentalité de sacrifice qui doit les imprégner et imprégner leur être, comme ce fut le cas de la veuve de Sarepta ou la mère de Jésus. Elles doivent aussi apprendre à compter sur elles-mêmes, comme ce fut le cas de Tabitha, de Lydia ou de Priscille, qui travaillaient de leurs mains pour pouvoir assurer leur indépendance et leur autonomie. En conclusion, nous retenons simplement qu'avec l'évolution des mentalités, les femmes africaines ont compris qu'elles ne pouvaient pas demeurer des témoins passifs de l'histoire de l'humanité. Leur engagement en vue de la transformation positive de la société est en forte croissance. Cependant, beaucoup d'entre elles restent tributaires d'une conception fataliste de leur place dans la société. Or, la situation des femmes dans la Bible était beaucoup plus délétère que la situation des femmes d'aujourd'hui. En ce sens, ces femmes-là, par leur courage, par leur dévouement, demeurent de véritables sources d'inspiration pour une dynamisation de l'engagement des femmes africaines à prendre en main leur destin et à être des témoins actifs de l'histoire de leur peuple. Mesdames et messieurs, merci pour l'attention accordée à la présentation. J'en ai fini.
Yes. Docteur Christon, Docteur Christon. Alors, si vous nous écoutez, au moins, restez en ligne, ne quittez pas, il y aura quelques questions. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, merci, et nous vous rejoignons pour les questions.
Our next presenter is Reverend Dr. Gerard Kimario, an apostle of Jesus Institute of Philosophy and Theology. Father Gerard is a Tanzanian from the Diocese of Moshi. He's a moral theologian. He's a lecturer at the Apostles of Jesus Institute. He has published a number of articles in international journals and attended a number of international conferences. He's also an expert in artificial intelligence. Father Gerard, you are welcome.
Okay, thank you.
His title is going to explain it to us.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for welcoming me. My presentation is on titled Biblical Ethical Teaching on Surrogacy and Childlessness in African Societies in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. What is the main purpose? Because I have developed an interest in such of artificial intelligence. The main purpose of my topic here this afternoon is first to share and to bring it to the awareness. And here, with specific focus to investigate the ethical procedures of artificial intelligence in addressing the issue of infertility among childless families in contemporary African society. Our guiding question would be, how can artificial intelligence, AI, in modern reproductive technologies applied in medicine address the issue of infertility? How? How will this emerging technology, of which I call it technologies, be applied to address the issue of infertility? And with that, I will follow the following procedure, the outline, first as I have introduced. Then the first one is the conceptual understanding of the topic. And then from there, I will consider three concepts, that is surrogacy, childlessness, artificial intelligence. And then the ethical teaching, of course, biblical inspirations. And then we shall have theological reflections underneath with Bible and the issue of fertility. The third area will be childlessness in African society. And then we shall go to the fourth one, which is artificial intelligence now, and the childlessness. And with this special focus on the infertility treatment and the AI. AI, I mean artificial intelligence challenges, way forward, and ethical action. Sometimes we call it moral action, and then conclusion. When I speak of conceptual understanding here, what I mean, the conceptualization here refers now to the process of forming ideas while paying attention to their meanings, matching with the reality as accurately as possible, especially when we are focusing on this new concept, most emerging concept on artificial intelligence. Really, what does it entail? Yes, with that, because I have gotten this principle from Pope Francis, who says realities are more important than ideas. So we may have so many ideas, but if the ideas do not lead us into the realities of life or address the concrete issues which are facing humanity, then the ideas are of no use, or we are just wasting in that. Now, the concept surrogacy here, it involves, I'm just going to give the highlights so that if you want the details now, when the paper will be out, you will go to the details of the concepts and more knowledgeable on that. But a quick understanding with surrogacy involves a woman carrying a baby for another person or a couple who cannot have children. Simple as that. And with surrogacy, for sure, is a process, is a method. And if it is a method, it dehumanizes the process of creating outside natural law. And if it co-creates outside natural law, Pope Francis urged us or called for its international ban, because it goes against our very existence, because you cannot produce outside the natural law of how a human being is supposed to be born. And this is the case because when you have exceptional technologies like CS, for instance, a cesarean section, it means what? It means these are technologies which are only to be applied to the unique cases whereby a human person cannot go the ordinary way with observed principles. Because in ordinary way, a human person is supposed to be born, not to be taken outside the womb. There is those ones who are removed from the womb and those ones who are born. But naturally, as a natural law, we are supposed to be born through the natural way. So, for this, under these arguments, Pope Francis banned and said that surrogacy is a grave violation of the dignity of the woman and even the child. I may not, and elsewhere, it is a concept dominated, of course, in the Western societies, and it is understood as a means, that is IVF, in vitro fertilization, to address couples who are unable to conceive. But now my issue here is, how do we help these couples to conceive without employing unnatural means? And then, therefore, I suggest perhaps with the coming of the emerging of artificial intelligence, as it will be applied in the reproductive technologies, then perhaps we may have a solution to such challenges which is facing part of our humanity. So then first here we must understand surrogacy is a means to attain something, and we must ask ourselves, is it the right means to attain that, however good it may be? Does the end justify the means? These are ethical questions. For instance, when we explore what scriptures say about family, parenting, and the role of women, can this one fit in? When we focus also on the creation of the human person, when we examine biblical stories and teachings as we have heard from the day one ago, can we better understand how surrogacy fits into our beliefs and values as Christians? Then another concept is childlessness. Here, for an African, a childless family is no family at all. Now we are contextualizing the knowledge. So there are various methods used to address such a menace within an African family or a community. For instance, a brother could sire children on behalf of the infertile brother or a deceased one, in case if he passed on without. In other communities, perhaps if is a woman who has a challenge, marries another woman to her husband. And in that sense, the children born out of that agreement are considered to belong to the first woman. Even so, and so many other things, still the church, the teaching of the church does not allow that. So the concept artificial intelligence here, the term artificial stands for human created object, an object. And the term intelligence stands for thinking power, which most associated with the human person. And therefore, AI is a man-made object with thinking power. So you must get that concept well. So as when we say it is applied, then we are able then to understand well the paper. So the intelligence here dimension describes the thinking human being in the sense of aligning one's ability and actions to his responsible moral principles. That's the meaning. So, the ethical teaching. With the ethical teaching here, given the above stated that arrogance involves a woman carrying a baby for another. Now, with ethical thinking here, when I base myself in the book of Genesis 1-2, it demonstrates that God gave humanity dominion, but with limitations to manage the earth. So, reading through these chapters, or the verses of the chapter, the 2, we observe that humanity was not given dominion over each other. Not at all. And because of that, then, the concept of surrogacy renders humanity into manipulation of its fellow humanity. This is contrary to eternal and divine law and even natural law. Thus, all humanity, even at the end, even at the one cell stage, means when the ovum is being produced, when the sperm is being produced, is precious to him because that is the source of our being. So moral action then becomes moral when the object, intention, and circumstance are all good. And with that understanding, let us see Bible and fertility. I have done it purposely. Bible and fertility, not infertility. Because when you read the stories of Hannah, as most of us scholars have presented here, Bible is never a book of infertility. The Bible is the book of fertility, not infertility. For instance, all the stories of the couple goes on to conceive. A good example is Elizabeth and Zachariah in the New Testament. This is the story of the redemption of humankind by God. So it means that in every story we have in the Bible of infertility, at the end, there is a hope and there's a child being born or a life is given out. So infertility demonstrates the ability of God to manifest the ability to do the impossible. So the concept of infertility, as outlined by God, involves the entire population, including human and livestock, all infertile at once, but never to the individual. I hope the point is well gotten. So the Bible shows childlessness as a deeply felt personal pain and social stigma. There is also an aspect of deep personal anguish in one of the attitudes expressed by people or couples without children. There is also social stigma, is also another challenge experienced by the childless figures in the community of the Israelites. What are the theological reflections here? The childless scenario is used to manifest the divine sovereignty and God and the promises of God. Therefore, the themes of faith, patience, and sovereignty of God are well reflected when we think of the issue of infertility. So the fulfillment in Christ is another dimension that describes the childlessness does not mean a barren spiritual life. So when it comes to the childlessness in African society, the main purpose of the family institution is to preserve and transmit human life. And here, the preservation and transmission of human life are reflected in their traditional social structures, such as family, clan, and kingship. So family is the way to express love, nurture, and companionship. So artificial intelligence and childlessness. Artificial intelligence is a strong technological wave rapidly growing and transforming the landscape of modern reproductive medicine. This one here is clearly seen and encouraged by the church through the document Donum Vitae, which calls for continued medical research to prevent and whenever possible to remedy sterility. So this one, with such understanding, then shed an array of hope on the childless families, especially when now the technology of artificial intelligence is applied in handling the issue of infertility. Briefly, some of the scholars, so far the research is still going on, the infertility treatment is, with AI, is rapidly advancing in digital healthcare across infertile cases with more advanced detection, with the accuracy, consistency, and speedy. In treating infertility, human beings who have infertility challenges can be addressed more efficiently when we consider AI in the area of reproductive technologies as a means to develop new means of treatment. So applying AI to reproductive technologies, for example, the egg, sperm, and embryos, AI identify the shapes, movements, and pedals of the time to make the best decision if there is a problem in that. With that, then we can assist us to discover how AI-driven tools and technologies are enhancing the accuracy of diagnostic tests, providing personalized treatment plans, and increasing the chances of successful conception for couples facing fertility challenges. Now, what are the AI challenges, ethical challenges here? Starts when they make choices for themselves. That is the AI gadgets. When they start now make chances for themselves, that is the ethical issue now comes in. And they start creating programs and instructions faster, more logical than us. So it means now it will replace the human aspect. Again, breaching privacy and security. And other challenges also include high cost, no original creativity. Like nowadays, even in our gadgets, the AI is put there even without our permission. When you scroll through our phones, smartphones, even my laptop here, you see AI popping in. Means what? Are we allowed them to pop in? Sometimes they even get the data without us knowing, without our permission. So this is a challenge, especially when it comes to the issue of infertility. It will become a very serious issue unless we develop policies that can handle the case. So other ethical challenges may include high cost, as I said, no original creativity. No, we say now we are always saying thinking with the box. Now you can think even without the box. No feelings and emotions, dependence and machines, and so forth. The undesirable and ethical problematic consequences relating to the advancements of AI may include also biases and discrimination, breaches of privacy and security, societal distortions such as unemployment, economic exploitation, and weakened democratic processes. A way forward. As a way forward, then here we are calling ourselves, especially the professionals, treading carefully when considering advanced reproductive technologies. So we need to prepare experts, especially in our African continent. We are so much lagging behind. So in the universities, learning institutions ought to prepare people so as they are able now to explore, even the theologians, even the Biblists. If we are not informed with this AI and how it works, how can you interpret it in the right way on what you don't know how that technology works? That's an issue. Because you can know how to use the phone, but do you know how that technology of the phone works? If you don't know, then, and we interpret the scripture with the technology which you don't know how it works, then I'm afraid to say we may end up committing a lot of heresies and distortions. And instead of educating and helping the people, we cause more harm. So the technologies also to be considered are those that honor human life here now. The technology that honor human life at one cell stage. Those ways that do not honor human life are to be avoided by any means. Also, good stewardship for our bodies and natural resources. Because we have to take care of our body. We cannot just eat anything if we really want to treat the issue of infertility and to have healthy bodies, then we ought to eat well because we are told also to take care of our bodies well. Infertility is only a symptom of a problem. So malfunctioning, for instance, malfunctioning thyroid or hormonal imbalance can cause that. So that's why Don Vite compels us to do research and searching for treatment. So integrating AI also into fertility treatment, AI-powered treatment, and so forth. Now, what is the ethical action as we move out here? Now, this can be realized through various established institutions that control the human realm, such as what? The government, religious sector, corporations, academics, that's learning institutions, nursing schools now specifically, private sector, and civil society. So with the government ought to regulate and see and give out policies and laws that govern and control AI from being abused. And also the most recent one is the first one which was issued, executive order, by the former US President Joe Biden. That is, you can see the link there, you can go. There is a very large document. It shows everything on how it should be done, but with the US citizen only. What about African countries? What about Kenya here where we are, Tanzania, Uganda? So the order here represents the strongest set of action any government in the world has ever taken on AI, security and trust. So you can see how the United States knows how to protect its people. So with this executive order, larger companies are obliged to share their safety tests results with the US government, without which then they cannot operate there. So the religious sector also ought to create various health programs that creates awareness about infertility. For instance, we have this one most recent, the Pontifical Academy of Life. It had organized a workshop in 2020, and it came up with a document called the Rome Call for AI Ethics. And even this year, there was also a conference in that. Also, the corporate sector is another, the private sector. And now, in conclusion, my dear brothers and sisters, is that the couples who want to have children but could not are encouraged more to trust in God as we continue working, as the professionals continue working on AI and how they can treat their challenge they are facing. Also, trusting in God entails pursuing medical treatment, building one's family through adoption, choosing to live free for the kingdom for the kingdom's work. That is we have celibates. Celibates. Those who are freely born, those who are made by man, and those who are by choice. So at least by choice, you can apply any of where one can suit. So in this sense, then, a childless couple may not sense that something is wrong about their childlessness state in case they consider that. However, for their mental and spiritual health, because also such people, mentally and spiritually, they may not so much be healthy, sometimes, to some extent. Now, what do we advise them to do? Here, it would be important to give voice to the grief, to the disappointment, and to the deep sense of loss over what they have. So they are advised to do that. So as they are able to cope up, and this is what David wrote in Psalm 51. I know that you desire truth in my inmost parts. So in that way, it's good also to be aware of oneself. We encourage them to be aware and to accept the situation. They mourn over it. They do their disappointment and deep sense loss over it, but at the same time, there are those other alternatives. So infertility, therefore, is not seen as a sign of spiritual failure. It is not a sign of displeasure of God, neither a spiritual failing on the part of the individual or even the couple. So, my dear, then we encourage them in that way, and with the coming of artificial intelligence, I think it will be a good way of addressing the issue. I know I've just given the highlights, as I have said. Perhaps the details of the paper, when the paper will come out, I think I will advise you not to miss it, because there are a lot of challenges within which will be addressed. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening, and then I welcome you many questions as you can for the improvement of the paper. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gerard Kimario. Yesterday, we heard about this topic of surrogacy and childlessness from the perspective of the social culture, from African social culture perspective. Now we have heard it from the moral perspective, and have been enlightened more by its relationship to artificial intelligence. Can we give him another clap, please? We are still managing our time, and we have 3 more presenters. The next presenter is Mr. Maurice Owinyo, and is presenting on a woman in Deuteronomistic corpus in the reading of Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 21. Mr. Owinyo is a Kenyan from the Archdiocese of Kisumu. His area of specialization is the Bible, and is very knowledgeable in Greek and Hebrew. He teaches in Kuea and some other places around. He is also a spiritual director, a counselor, a pastor, and many other things. Mr. Owinyo, you are most welcome.
Hey. Hey. Sister. Good. My topic of discussion is a woman in the Deuteronomistic corpus, in the reading of Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 21. This work will be divided in two main parts, and those two main parts will be enveloped in the prologue and the epilogue. So I'll begin with an introduction. It should be realized that in many discourses concerning a woman, the focus is on human rights. The UN on gender equality observes that gender equality, besides being a fundamental human right, is essential for achieving a peaceful society. And not only a peaceful society, but a full potential and sustainable development. In 1979, the General Assembly adopted the Convention on Elimination on all forms of discrimination against a woman. In traditional society, which was majorly a patriarchal society, the space of a woman was limited. In some society, a woman was regarded as non-entity. She could not participate in the activities of a man. In the Jewish society, for example, a man would thank God for having created him male, not a female. The man could divorce the wife at will, could even give the daughter for marriage, even for prostitution. It goes without saying, therefore, that it is a man who actually gives a woman the value. A woman becomes complete only in relationship to a man. A widow who loses a husband is a defenseless person, having lost the defender. The paradox, however, is that despite this perspective, a woman features predominantly in biblical discourses. She participates in many roles in Israelite society. The Awistic writer, for example, opens his account by affirming the equality between a man and woman. So the writer tells us that man and woman were made from the same substance, a bone of my bone, a person like me. Mary Evans, on her part, notes that the Old Testament as a whole, a woman is treated as a secondary being. It should not, however, be lost to us that the biblical literature is a rich and diverse literature on a woman. The focus of this presentation will be on a woman in Deuteronomistic corpus with a focus on Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 21. And then leads us to the question, what is this Deuteronomistic corpus? Deuteronomistic corpus is a product of a Deuteronomistic writer or a redactor. This writer was first identified by a scholar known as Martin North. Martin North thought of this writer as a single writer who lived during the exilic period. And he was responsible for what we now call the Deuteronomistic history. Of course, today, not many scholars agree with Martin North. But what we can say is that the Deuteronomistic corpus is probably one of the most influential corpus in the Old Testament. We find the influence of these writers in what we call the historical books, prophetic works, and even in the Psalter. Some extreme view known as pan-Deuteronomism holds that the whole of the Old Testament was influenced by these writers. The challenge is, how can we determine a text as Deuteronomistic? The first persons to contribute towards this process are Bricklesman and Lofik. Bricklesman was interested more in the Tetrachuk. Lofik, on his part, laid certain ways in which a text can be talked of as being Deuteronomistic. One of the considerations that he put forward is the stylistic feature. So he believed that the Deuteronomistic writer bears kind of a noble structure. He has a beautiful way of writing. The second consideration that he put forward is to look at the content and the interests. Like, for instance, today, we know that one of the interests of this writer is the centralization of the cult, where God should be worshipped in one place, and the place of worship is Jerusalem. The third consideration that he put forward was the narrative frame. So you look at how the narrative works out, and you can tell whether the text is Deuteronomistic or not. The search for a criteria for determining Deuteronomistic elements has yielded interesting results. I will not go into all of them. But one of such results was put by a scholar known as Drivers. And Drivers came with a list of words that he thought that those words are typically Deuteronomistic. Today, scholars challenge the use of words alone. And Moshe Weinfeld has worked on what we call phraseologies. So the phrases that can tell whether a text is Deuteronomistic. We can note, therefore, that to determine whether a text is Deuteronomistic or not, we need the context. And we know that meaning is always contextual. In determining the Deuteronomistic elements, the book of Deuteronomy becomes the springboard. It is the starting point from which we must match the ideas. So we must relate the ideas that we find in other texts and compare them with the language in the book of Deuteronomy. Good. When we look at a woman in Deuteronomistic corpus, the most acclaimed or pronounced woman in this corpus is a woman by name Deborah. Deborah, if you look at the etymology, means a bee. So the name most likely points to the industrious nature of this woman. The character points to the text that Father Eric dealt with yesterday here on Proverbs 31, verse 27. A woman who does not eat the bread of idleness